Hi, welcome back to Online Her 74. Don't forget to subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss the latest horror stories. Without further ado, Let's get right into the story. People say that the road near Mount Sergia is cursed. They say, if you walk alone past midnight, especially on a Friday, strange things might follow you home. I used to laugh at stories like that. Folklore, I thought, the kind of tales told to scare children into staying inside. But that night, I wasn't laughing. It was late, almost midnight, and I was walking back from the village market. My basket empty, my wallet even emptier. The moon was high, clouds drifting slow across its face like silk. I was tired, my sandals were worn thin, and my thoughts were even heavier than my steps. Amara was waiting at home. My wife, my everything. She didn't complain when the rice ran out. She smiled when the roof leaked. She even laughed when the wind blew out our last candle. But I knew deep down I was failing her, and worse, I was starting to fail myself. As I rounded the last bend before the forest path, I saw him. An old man standing in the middle of the road, wearing a long black robe that fluttered even though there was no wind. He had a wooden staff and a silver chain around his neck, glinting oddly in the moonlight. His face was hidden by a wide straw hat. Looking for a way out, he asked, his voice deep and clear, as if he'd been expecting me. I should have kept walking. I should have said nothing. But instead, I nodded. Yes, anything. I'm tired of being poor. He chuckled softly, like someone who'd heard that same answer 1,000 times. Then come, let's talk, he said, gesturing toward a side path I had never noticed before, narrow, lined with tall grass, and unnaturally dark. I hesitated. Will this cost me anything? I asked. He turned his head just slightly. I couldn't see his face, but I could feel his smile. Only what you're willing to give. I followed him. The path twisted deeper into the woods, where even the crickets dared not sing. Somewhere far behind us, the normal world faded. The stars disappeared. The air felt heavier, almost syrupy. We stopped in a small clearing. In the center stood a stone altar, cracked with age and covered in moss. On top of it sat a candle, already lit, though no one had touched it. The man turned to me and placed something in my hand, a ring made of dried grass, with a single white hair woven through it. Place this on your finger, he said, and speak these words. With this vow, I bind myself to the keeper of wealth, until the day I am made whole. I stared at the ring. It looked so simple, so harmless. And yet, as I held it, I felt a strange heat on my skin, like the pulse of something watching me, something ancient. What happens after? I asked. He paused. You will be rich, respected, loved, but every blessing has a shadow. I should have turned back. I should have dropped the ring and run home. But I didn't. I placed the ring on my finger and whispered the vow. The woods fell silent. The candle flickered once, then burned brighter. And in the darkness beyond the altar, I saw it. 2 glowing eyes, hooved feet, a tall, still figure with the horns of a goat and the posture of a man. It didn't move. It didn't speak. But I felt something deep inside me shift, like a door had opened that could never be closed again. The old man bowed deeply toward the creature and said, "It is done." I walked home in silence, heart pounding, ring still tight on my finger. I didn't understand what I had just done, but by the end of that week, gold coins appeared under my pillow. They weren't ordinary coins. I had never seen markings like that, symbols etched in spirals, almost alive, as if they shifted when I blinked. I held them in my hand, and they felt warm, like they had been waiting for me. Amara didn't ask where they came from. She only looked at me with tearful eyes and said, "Is this real? Are we saved?" I nodded, though I wasn't sure what we were saved from. That night, our dinner was full. We ate with both hands. We really laughed for the first time in months. I bought her new fabric for her dresses. I replaced the broken window. I even repainted our little gate. We were happy. But happiness born from a deal is never simple. It always asks for something in return. On the 7th night, I heard a knock. It wasn't loud. Just 3 soft taps on the front door. I opened it and saw no one. Only the scent of burned leaves hung in the air, and on the step, a small wooden box wrapped in red cloth. Inside was a white veil, and a note, written in handwriting that wasn't human. Tonight, the union must be sealed. Come alone. My fingers trembled. I didn't tell Amara. I kissed her forehead and lied. I said I needed to check something at the far edge of the rice field. I walked the path back to the woods, the same one the old man had taken me through. The forest was waiting. The air was colder now, but the candle on the altar still burned untouched by wind or time, and there it was. The creature, the same one from that night. It stood tall, silent, its horns glinting under the moon. Its eyes burned like embers, but not with anger, more like patience, a kind of expectation. Asterisk in front of the altar was a small mat, and beside it, a mirror made of polished obsidian. Asterisk the old man appeared from the shadows. Just like before, no footsteps, no sound. "This is your wedding," he said. I opened my mouth to protest, but he raised a finger. Asterisk say nothing. I speak only when you're asked. Asterisk he draped the veil over my head, even though I could barely breathe under it. Then he placed a bowl in my hands, empty, cold, and heavy. Asterisk, repeat after me, he whispered. I vow to serve the guardian of fortune, to honor this bond in silence, and to offer what is asked when the time has come. I repeated the words. The wind stopped. The fire dimmed. The creature stepped forward. Its hooves, silent on the earth. It touched the rim of the bowl with one long finger. Instantly, the bowl filled with golden dust. The old man smiled. It is done, he said again. I removed the veil, and the creature was gone. Only the bowl remained in my hands. Asterisk when I returned home, Amara was asleep. I watched her chest rise and fall, and for a moment, I convinced myself that maybe, just maybe, this would be the end of it. Maybe there would be no more knocks, no more strange dreams, no more secrets. Asterisk, I placed the bowl of gold dust inside a wooden chest and locked it. That was the night I married a demon. I told myself it was symbolic, a ritual, a small price for a better life. But I was wrong, because when you say I do in the world of spirits, they never forget and they always come back. I didn't know how soon. Asterisk it started exactly 33 nights after the ritual. Asterisk at first, it was just a feeling like someone was watching us through the windows. Amara said she felt cold even when the lantern was lit. The wind knocked gently on the shutters, even though the trees outside were still. Then came the sound. It was soft, almost tender, a cry like a baby. Asterisk, but not our baby, not yet. Amara wasn't even pregnant. And yet, that night, just past midnight, we heard it. A delicate, broken sobbing, drifting in through the back door. It sounded close. Too close. We looked at each other. Did you hear that? She whispered. I nodded slowly. We stepped outside, lantern in hand, our hearts thudding in sync. The backyard was quiet, cloaked in silver moonlight. Nothing moved. No wind, no insects, no birds. Asterisk, but the crying. It continued. Asterisk, it was coming. From behind the old well. Asterisk, we crept toward it, careful not to make a sound. And that's when we saw it. Asterisk, a small bundle, white cloth, unmoving, resting in the grass. Asterisk, Amara gasped and rushed forward, but I held her back. Something felt wrong. The air around the bundle shimmered, like heat waves rising from stone. And then, as we watched, it disappeared. Not vanished, just faded, like smoke. We didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I found tiny footprints. In the soil, too small for an adult, too sharp to belong to a child. They circled the well, stopped by the back door, and vanished. Asterisk Amara stayed quiet all day. She tried to smile. She hummed while cooking, but I could see the fear in her eyes. It matched mine. That night, the crying came again. Only this time, it was louder, closer. I sat on the floor with my back against the door, clutching the wooden bowl of gold dust from the chest. I didn't know why. Maybe I thought it would protect me. It didn't, because as I sat there, I felt something brush against the other side of the door. Asterisk, and then, a voice, softer than mist. Something whispered my name. Asterisk, not father. Asterisk, not husband. Just mine. Asterisk, that word clung to me like wet cloth. I didn't open the door. I didn't move. I just sat there until the first bird sang, and sunlight began to pour into the kitchen. Asterisk, when I finally stood, my legs were numb, but something deeper inside me felt colder. Asterisk, Amara noticed. She always did. Asterisk, you're pale, she said softly, handing me a cup of warm tea. Did you sleep at all? Asterisk, I nodded. I lied. She didn't push, but her hands trembled when she held her own cup. Asterisk, that morning, we didn't talk much. There was an unspoken agreement between us. If we stayed silent, maybe the fear would stay silent too, but it didn't. Later that afternoon, while hanging clothes to dry, Amara called out to me. Her voice shook. Asterisk, come here please. Asterisk, I rushed. Outside, asterisk, she stood by the window of our bedroom, staring at the ground below. At first, I didn't understand. But then, I saw them move, clear, sharp, impossible. They weren't from any goat. They were larger, deeper, like they'd burned themselves into the soil. Asterisk, and they led straight to the window beneath the cradle. Asterisk, we didn't speak. We didn't need to. Asterisk, that night, I stayed, awake with a lantern in one hand and my old hunting knife in the other, not that it would have helped. Asterisk, at midnight. Dara started crying. Asterisk, except Dara hadn't been born yet. Asterisk, I froze. The sound came from the cradle anyway, soft and steady, as though an invisible baby lay inside it. Amara rushed in, heart pounding, her hands reaching instinctively for the empty space. Asterisk, and that's when it happened. Asterisk, the cradle rocked by itself, back and forth, back and forth. Asterisk, Amara screamed and stumbled back. I ran to her, pulling her into my arms, shielding her eyes from the impossible scene. The rocking stopped. We didn't sleep at all that night. Asterisk, at dawn, we found something else. Asterisk, inside the cradle, where there should have been nothing, lay a single white feather, and on the floor below it, a trail of ash, shaped like small hooves, leading toward the window again. Asterisk, Amara looked at me, her eyes red and tired. Asterisk, what is happening to us? Asterisk, I wanted to tell her the truth. That this was all my fault. That the whispers, the cries, the footprints, they were just the beginning. Asterisk, but all I could say was, I don't know, because I didn't have the courage. Not yet. Asterisk, that night, I fell into a sleep so heavy it felt unnatural. Like someone had pulled me down into it not to rest, but to reveal something I'd tried too hard to forget. Asterisk, in the dream, I stood once again in the clearing where the altar stood, but this time, the candle was out. The trees were bent inward, their branches clawing at the sky like ribs. The air was thick with smoke, and in the center, waiting just like before, was the goat demon. Asterisk, but it wasn't watching me with stillness anymore, it moved. Asterisk, its hooves cracked the earth. Its breath steamed in the cold, and when it opened its mouth, it spoke. Asterisk, not with words, but with a voice that echoed inside my skull like a second heartbeat. Asterisk, greater than the seed has been planted. Asterisk, I tried to step back. My feet wouldn't move. Asterisk, the vow was sealed. You wore the ring, you made the promise. And now, its hand reached toward me, not to grab, but to point. Behind me, a figure appeared. Small, fragile, wrapped in white cloth. A cradle floated in the void, rocking softly. Asterisk, greater than the child is mine. Asterisk, no, I shouted. He hasn't even been born yet. Asterisk, the demon tilted its head, almost amused. Asterisk, greater than promises are not made with clocks, they are made with soul, and his soul has already answered. The cradle stopped rocking. I turned to look and saw that it was empty. Asterisk, I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat, my heart pounding like thunder. My hands trembled as I reached for Amara beside me. She was still asleep, her hands gently resting on her belly. Asterisk, she didn't know yet. We hadn't told anyone, but I knew. She was pregnant, and somehow, he knew too. The timing wasn't a coincidence. It was part of the deal. Asterisk, suddenly, everything made sense. The crying, the hoof prints, the feather in the cradle. It wasn't haunting us randomly. It was waiting, watching, claiming. That morning, I finally looked at the ring still wrapped around my finger. It had tightened. The dried grass that once looked harmless had grown darker and now pulsed faintly. With warmth, I tried to pull it off. It wouldn't budge. Asterisk, and I realized something that made my stomach twist. This wasn't just a warning anymore, it was a countdown. Asterisk, and I didn't know how many nights I had left. Asterisk, the next morning, I packed quietly just enough for one day and told Amara I needed to check on a broken fence near the forest line. She smiled and kissed my cheek, completely unaware that I was lying again. Asterisk, but this time, I wasn't lying to protect her. I was lying to protect what was growing inside her. I didn't go to the fence. I walked straight toward the mountains, toward the last person in this world I thought might understand what I had done. Asterisk, an old shaman lived near the edge of the cliffs, far beyond the rice fields, past the burned banyan tree where birds never perched. People said he used to speak with spirits before his tongue turned black. Others said he no longer dreamed because the dead whispered to him every night. Asterisk, it took hours to reach his home. Asterisk, a hut made of woven reeds, wrapped in smoke and silence. Asterisk, when I called out his name, no one answered, but the door creaked open, slowly, on its own. Asterisk, inside, he sat cross-legged beside a dying fire, eyes closed, as if he had been waiting for me long before I knew I'd come. I stepped closer and cleared my throat. He didn't move, but he spoke. Asterisk, you wore the ring. I froze. Yes, I whispered. Asterisk, and now, he said, you've come to break the vow. I nodded. Please, I begged. There must be a way, a trade, a ritual, anything. For a long time, he said nothing. Then he opened his eyes. Asterisk, they were clouded with white, like stone washed by rain. He didn't look surprised. He looked tired. Asterisk, you made the marriage. You spoke the vow. You accepted the wealth. That cannot be undone. Asterisk, but I didn't know. I said, almost shouting. I didn't know it would ask for asterisk your firstborn. He finished for me. It always asks for the firstborn. My mouth went dry. There has to be another way. I whispered. Please, anything. The fire flickered low. Finally, the shaman leaned forward and whispered something that chilled me more than the demon's voice ever had. Asterisk, there is only one path. You cannot stop the claim, but you can offer something more valuable. ... Double quotes. Asterisk, what do you mean? His expression grew distant, as if listening to something I couldn't hear. Love, he said. Innocence, a pure soul, something deeper than lineage. If you offer it willingly, the demon might accept the trade. I swallowed hard, and if I can't find it, Asterisk, then the child will go, he said simply, and there will be nothing left of him but his name, whispered by the wind, night after night, just beyond your door. Asterisk, I stood there, frozen. The fire had gone out. The shaman closed his eyes once more. Asterisk, and the last thing he said, in a voice barely audible, was, asterisk, greater than you should have never said, I do, to something that doesn't belong in this world. Asterisk, those words followed me the entire way home, echoing with every step, every heartbeat, every gust of wind that whispered through the trees. Asterisk, when I finally reached our front gate, the sky was already deep orange. The lanterns along the porch had turned themselves on. Amara sat on the swing, gently stroking her belly, humming a lullaby I didn't recognize. Asterisk, she looked up and smiled. Asterisk, something about the way the light touched her face made me want to fall to my knees and confess everything, right then, right there, but I didn't, not yet. Asterisk, that night, I couldn't sleep. The floorboards creaked in strange rhythms. The wind carried the scent of something bitter, not rot, not smoke, but something older, something sacred, and wrong. Asterisk, around midnight, I heard a soft thump, then another. It came from beneath the floor. Asterisk, I got up, lit a lantern, and followed the sound to the far corner of the house, a storage room we barely used, where old baskets and cracked tools gathered dust. The thumping stopped when I opened the door, but the floor felt hollow. Asterisk, I knelt and began to clear the corner, one item at a time, until I found it, a wooden hatch, hidden beneath an old rug, a hatch I'd never seen before. With trembling fingers, I opened it. The cold that hit me was not from this world. It was the kind of cold that didn't bite your skin, it gripped your soul. Asterisk, beneath the hatch was a narrow stone staircase leading into darkness. Asterisk, I should have turned back, but something pulled me forward. Lantern in hand, I descended. The steps groaned under my weight. The deeper I went, the quieter everything became. Even my breathing felt distant, like it belonged to someone else. And then I saw it. A cave. Asterisk, carved from rock, lit by glowing moss that pulsed with faint green light. Along the walls were carving symbols identical to those on the gold coins, but larger, more intricate. At the center of the cave stood a small shrine, made of bones, worn with black feathers, and resting atop it, a stone bowl filled with what looked like ashes and tiny white teeth. But that wasn't what made me fall to my knees. It was the painting on the wall behind the shrine, faded with time, but still, clear enough to recognize. Asterisk, a man, kneeling, a ring on his finger, a creature with the head of a goat standing beside him. Asterisk, and beside the creature, a baby, being handed over. My breath caught. This wasn't a new pact. This was ancestral, passed down. I hadn't just cursed my son. Asterisk, I had stepped into a circle that had been waiting for generations, and I had taken my place in it without even knowing. Asterisk, as I stared at the painting, the moss dimmed. A voice echoed from the far end of the cave. Greater than, he will be the ninth. I turned, but nothing was there. Asterisk, only the sound of soft, rhythmic breathing, like something very small was sleeping just behind the shadows. I didn't wait to see what it was. I ran. Asterisk, up the stairs, through the hatch, into the hallway. I slammed the door shut behind me and collapsed against it, heart hammering like it was trying to escape my chest. Asterisk, and standing there, at the end of the hall, holding a candle in one hand and her belly with the other was Amara. She had heard everything. I didn't need to ask how much she'd seen. Her face told me more than words ever could. Her lips trembled, her eyes glossed with something worse than fear betrayal. Asterisk, you knew, she whispered. I opened my mouth, but no words came. You knew, and you didn't tell me. I was trying to protect you, I said, too quickly, too softly. She stepped closer. Asterisk, from what? Her voice broke. From the thing that's coming for our child. From the pact you made with something that isn't even. She stopped herself, choked on the rest. You lied to me. I didn't know what it would cost, I said. Then, why did you take it? She snapped. But gold, the land, the praise from everyone who used to pity us. Why did you take all of it if you weren't ready to pay the price? I couldn't answer, because the truth was, I had been ready to pay, just never imagined the price would be him, our son. I'll fix this, I said. She laughed dry and bitter, like a leaf crushed underfoot. Fix it, she echoed. You can't even look me in the eye. And she was right. I had built this house of lies and called it a home. I had brought this creature into our lives. I had made a vow I didn't understand. Asterisk, and now the countdown had a face, a name, a heartbeat inside the woman I loved. Asterisk, suddenly, she doubled over, gasping. Asterisk, Amara. I rushed to her side. Asterisk, she grabbed my arm, tight. Her face went pale. He's moving. I placed my hand on her stomach, and what I felt didn't feel like kicking. Asterisk, it felt like trembling. Asterisk, like the baby inside her was afraid. Asterisk, the candle in her hand flickered. Asterisk, and from the direction of the hatch behind us came the faint sound of laughter. Childlike, wrong. Asterisk, I wrapped my arms around Amara. shielding her from the sound, but I knew it was too late to shield her from the truth. She had seen the darkness asterisk, and now she carried its most precious prize. Asterisk. I didn't sleep that night, neither did Amara. We lay side by side in silence, both pretending not to hear the faint footsteps above our ceiling, or the soft scratching at the window, like hooves gently tapping glass. Asterisk. The air inside the house had changed. Asterisk. It wasn't just heavy, it was thick, like every breath had to push through something invisible. Asterisk. Around midnight, the wind outside stopped completely. The insects fell silent. Even the moonlight dimmed. Asterisk. And then, the clocks stopped. All of them. The one in the kitchen, the one in the hallway, even the small wooden one above our bed, all frozen at 12 o'clock. Their hands unmoving, ticking no more. I sat up. Amara was already awake, staring at the bedroom door. Asterisk. Do you hear that? She whispered. I did. It was faint at first. A low, steady bell, distant, like it was being rung underwater. And then, another sound layered beneath it, something dragging slowly across the floorboards. Asterisk. Like hooves. Again. Asterisk. But this time, inside the house. Asterisk. I grabbed the lantern, but it refused to light. Every match I struck fizzled into black dust. Asterisk. So I reached for the one thing I hadn't touched in days, the bowl of gold dust. Asterisk. I held it with both hands, even though it had long turned cold. That's when we heard the voice, right outside our door. Asterisk. Greater than I have come to collect what is mine. Asterisk. It didn't shout, it didn't growl. Asterisk. It announced, like a noble guest invited to a feast he didn't need to ask for. Amara clutched my arm. Please, she whispered. Don't let him take our baby. Asterisk. I stood, legs shaking, every part of me wanting to run, but with nowhere left to run to. I opened the door. What I saw wasn't a nightmare. It wasn't even something I could describe as alive. Asterisk. The creature stood in the hallway, taller than the ceiling should have allowed. Its horns curled, like roots, its hooves burned without fire. Its face wasn't there at all, just a swirling void beneath a crown of ash and feather. Asterisk. It didn't step forward. Asterisk. It didn't need to. Time had already stopped, and everything in this house, every object, every sound, every breath, now moved according to its will, not ours. I raised the bowl of gold dust between us. I haven't broken the vow, I said. Not yet. The creature tilted its head, as if considering my words, and then it spoke again. Asterisk. Greater than. Then break it now, and offer something greater. I froze. It was giving me a choice. Asterisk. But I had no idea what greater meant. What else could possibly equal the life of a firstborn? Before I could answer, Amara stepped beside me. No, she said quietly. You don't get to decide alone anymore. Her voice didn't shake, and for the first time since this horror began, the creature stepped back. Just one step, but it was enough. Asterisk. The candle on the altar downstairs flared to life, even though no one had touched it. Asterisk. The air shifted. Time began to tick forward again. But just before the creature faded, its voice echoed once more, not angry, not desperate, but certain, greater than next full moon. And then it was gone, leaving behind only silence, asterisk, and the sound of our baby's heartbeat, strong and fast beneath Amara's skin. It was the only thing keeping me standing. That rhythm, that pulse, that proof that he was still ours for now. Asterisk. The full moon was 8 nights away. Asterisk. We tried everything. Asterisk. I went back to the shaman's hut. It was abandoned, burned to the ground, as if it had never been there at all. Asterisk. I prayed morning, night, even in the middle of the fields where no one could see me. I lit candles, buried coins, recited every forgotten mantra my grandmother once taught me. Nothing worked. Amara consulted a priestess in secret. The woman took one look at her belly, gasped, and refused to even touch her. Asterisk. The shadow around this child, she whispered, is not human. By the 5th night, I began to unravel. I stopped eating. I stopped sleeping. The villagers said I looked sick. Some avoided our home entirely. Even the animals no longer came near. Asterisk. The gold we once celebrated turned cold, tarnished, dusty. No matter how much we had, it felt empty in our hands. And then came the 7th night, the night before the full moon. That was when he returned. Not outside, inside. Asterisk. The moment the sun set, the house grew still. The clocks didn't stop this time, they sped up. The hands spun in circles, faster and faster, until they all snapped in place at midnight. Asterisk. Amara screamed from the bedroom. Asterisk. I ran. Asterisk. She stood in the center of the room, eyes wide, pointing toward the cradle we had set up weeks ago, a gift from her sister. Asterisk. Inside, it was a child, not a newborn, not our son. Asterisk. But a boy, pale and silent, with horns sprouting from his head, curled like roots around his ears. His eyes opened slowly, black, reflective, ancient. Then he smiled, not cruelly, not sweetly, just knowingly, and whispered, "It's time." The walls around us began to breathe. Yes, breathe, like lungs. The ceiling groaned. The floor buckled under our feet. Soft like skin stretched too thin. I dropped to my knees and shouted into the dark. I'll give you anything. Just not him, please, not our child. The boy in the cradle blinked once, then the creature's voice filled the room, not from the walls. Not from the cradle, but from within me, like my own bones were echoing with its presence. Asterisk, greater than offer your life. I froze. The words weren't metaphor. Asterisk, not a heroic sacrifice. Asterisk, not a noble exchange. This was different. Greater than, not your death, your life, forever. In my service, in my name. I stared at Amara. She didn't speak. She didn't beg me not to. She just looked into my eyes, searching for the part of me that hadn't completely drowned in fear. And then she nodded. Once, asterisk, the boy in the cradle faded into mist. Asterisk, the air grew still again. The walls stopped breathing, and a single white feather drifted to the floor. Asterisk, I had made my choice, but the vow wasn't sealed yet. That would happen tomorrow night, beneath the full moon. Asterisk, and once it did, I would no longer belong to this world. Asterisk, that truth echoed inside me as the sun dipped behind the hills, and the sky turned the color of rusted gold. Asterisk, the full moon rose slowly, like it was ashamed of what it had come to witness. Asterisk, everything felt too quiet. No wind, no crickets, no breath. Even Amara seemed caught between worlds, her eyes glassy, hands trembling over her swollen belly. Asterisk, I asked her to leave the house before midnight. Asterisk, she refused. Asterisk, if you're giving your life, she said, then I'm giving my presence. He deserves to see us both, one last time, before we lose you. Asterisk, that almost broke me, but I didn't cry. There wasn't time. Asterisk, I lit the candle on the altar one last time. It flickered, then flared, unnaturally tall and silent. The scent of dried grass filled the air. Asterisk, then, as the moon reached its peak, I stood at the center of the room and waited. The walls didn't groan this time. They opened. Asterisk split apart like petals, and through them walked him, no longer veiled in shadow. Asterisk, he wore robes made of ash. Feathers trailed behind him like a second spine. His hooves no longer touched the ground, but floated just above it, silent. He was beautiful in the way avalanches are beautiful, terrible, and final. Amara held her breath. Asterisk, the creature turned to me and spoke, his voice deeper than before, and more human now. Asterisk, greater than you have chosen. Speak the vow. Asterisk, I reached for the ring that had never left my finger. It now burned against my skin, glowing with golden red veins. Asterisk, I took a breath and spoke words I had never learned, but somehow knew. Asterisk, words that didn't sound like mine. Asterisk, words that weren't meant to be spoken by human lips. Asterisk, when I finished, the candle went out by itself. Asterisk, and in the silence that followed, I waited for pain, for transformation, for fire or shadow or death. But none came. The demon simply stepped closer. Asterisk, and placed a hand over my heart. It was cold, but not cruel. Asterisk, greater than now. You are mine, not in body, not in soul, in duty. Asterisk, greater than in fatherhood. Asterisk, I blinked. What? He turned to Emron for the first time, bowed his head. Greater than the child is, no longer mine. Asterisk, greater than because you are. Asterisk, and just like that, he vanished. Asterisk, no flash, no smoke, no final threat, only silence, and the sudden sound of clocks ticking again in rhythm. I looked at Amara. She fell to her knees, sobbing, not out of fear, out of relief. We had done it. The child was safe. But in saving him, asterisk, I had signed myself into a second life, one that didn't belong to me anymore. Greater than end of episode 11, asterisk next. I became his servant but not his slave, asterisk, but strangely, it didn't feel like a curse. The morning after the ritual, the house was still. No whispers, no footsteps, no frozen clocks. The sky outside was a perfect, aching blue. Amara slept peacefully for the first time in weeks. Her face glowed, her breathing soft and even, and when she awoke, she said something I never expected to hear. Asterisk, he's quiet now. Inside, me, at peace. We didn't talk about him again. Asterisk, but I felt it. Something had changed in me. It began subtly. I no longer cast a shadow at noon. Dogs didn't bark when I walked past. They bowed their heads. Asterisk, and once, when I reached for a flower to offer Amara, it bloomed in my palm before I could pluck it. Asterisk, I tried to ignore the signs. Asterisk, tried to pretend life would go back to what it was. Asterisk, but a week later, the first task came. I woke at exactly 3:33 a.m. The bowl of gold dust had reappeared on our altar. Full, once again. Asterisk, inside it, a black feather rested fresh, warm to the touch, though no bird had flown. I knew what it meant. The vow I made wasn't to die for him, it was to serve, to act on his behalf. Asterisk, not blindly, not mindlessly, but with full knowledge that what I did from that night on was no longer just for myself. That day, I walked into a neighboring village where a man had built his wealth by bearing the debts of others, stealing their land through false names. A man who laughed at hunger and locked water wells during dry seasons. Asterisk, I spoke one word to him. His eyes rolled back. he fell to his knees. Asterisk, and by nightfall, he had vanished from that village, never to return. No one knew what happened. But I did. Asterisk, and strangely, so did the wind. That night, as I stood beneath the stars, the same voice that had once terrified me whispered again, not in my ear, but in my chest, like it lived behind my ribs now. Asterisk, greater than you are not my slave. Asterisk, greater than you are my balance. Asterisk, and just like that, I understood. I was no longer just a man. I was his walking oath, his echo in the mortal world, his keeper of promises unspoken. And my son would be born free. And he was. Asterisk, he came into the world on a quiet morning, just as the sun broke over the hills. No storm, no omen, just the cry of a healthy child and the trembling joy in Mara's eyes as she held him for the first time. Asterisk, he had her nose, my hands, and no mark, no scar, no sign of pact or possession. He was perfect. The midwife, an old woman with cloudy eyes and a heart too soft for this world, said she'd never seen such a peaceful birth. Asterisk, it's as if he already knows he's safe, she whispered. Asterisk, Amara wept, and I held them both, and for the first time in what felt like centuries, I allowed myself to believe we had truly escaped it all. Asterisk, but that night, something strange happened. The child did not cry. He didn't sleep either. Asterisk, he just stared up, eyes wide, fixed not on the ceiling, but through it, as if he could see something beyond the roof, beyond the stars. Asterisk, and when I leaned in to kiss his forehead, he smiled, not like a baby, but knowingly. I froze. Asterisk, Amara noticed nothing. She was already drifting off, exhausted from labor. Asterisk, but I held my son a little closer and whispered, "Who are you, little one?" And then, just for a second, I saw it, reflected in his eyes. Asterisk, not horns, not wings, not darkness, but light, a flicker of golden fire. Asterisk, the same glow I had once seen in the altar bowl, on the night I made the vow. Asterisk, I understood. Then the bargain had been fulfilled. The child was not a prisoner of the pact. He was its inheritance, not cursed, not claimed, but chosen. Asterisk, not by the demon, but perhaps by something older, something that had simply been watching. Asterisk, since that night, our house has been different. Not haunted, not cursed, but aware. The floors no longer creak under our feet, they respond. Asterisk, the air shifts before we enter a room, like it's remembering us. Asterisk, sometimes I wake in the middle of the night to the soft sound of breathing. Not Amara's, not the baby's, not mine, but the house itself. Breathing, not in fear. In watchfulness, I've stopped asking questions, not because I'm afraid of the answers, asterisk, but because I've learned some truths are meant to be lived, not understood. Asterisk, our son is growing fast. Too fast, maybe. He spoke his first word before he turned 6 months old. It wasn't mama or papa. Asterisk, it was listen. Asterisk, he said it one morning as I stared at the window, wondering if the wind carried voices or just memory. I turned to him, heart racing. What did you say? Asterisk, he looked at me, calm, not like a baby. Like someone remembering. Greater than. It's not done, he whispered, almost like a warning. But it's watching. He never said it again. Amara thinks it was just a dream, a fluke, but I know better. And deep down, I think he does too. Asterisk, he doesn't fear shadows. He smiles at the corners of the room like something is standing there, just outside our sight. Something familiar. We don't speak of the vow anymore, but every full moon, I light a single candle on the altar. Not to summon, not to worship. Asterisk, just to acknowledge, because now I know the truth. The deal I made didn't just save my son, it changed the fabric of our lives forever. This house will never be silent, because silence is the language of old things, and in silence they remember. Asterisk, and in remembering, they remain. Asterisk, that's the truth I live with now. Not as a curse, but as a kind of quiet clarity. Asterisk, people still come to our village, asking how I turned my life around. How I went from a man drowning in debt, to the owner of thriving land, a peaceful home, and a child that seems to glow with something otherworldly. Asterisk, I never give them the full answer. Asterisk, because they wouldn't believe it. Asterisk, they'd see a story of darkness. But I lived something deeper. I married a demon, not out of love, but out of desperation. Asterisk, and somehow, in that act of surrender, I found something I never expected, my own worth. See, the demon didn't just give me wealth. Asterisk, he gave me a mirror, one that showed me how far I'd drifted from who I wanted to be. And strangely, it was through serving him, not worshiping, not fearing, but serving, that I rediscovered what it meant to protect, to choose, to sacrifice, to be human, because being human isn't about being free from darkness. Asterisk, it's about choosing what to do within it. Asterisk, I used to think I gave up everything the night I said yes, but I was wrong. I received something that night, not just my son's life, but the permission to become the kind of father who would walk through fire for his family. Asterisk, now, When I watch Amara in the garden, and my son playing under the banyan tree with a wind that seems to follow him like a pet, I don't feel haunted, I feel held. Not by chains, but by choice. I don't know what my son will become. I don't know what the house will whisper to him when he's old enough to understand. But I know one thing. If ever he is asked to choose between fear and faith, between power and love, I hope he remembers the man who once said yes to a monster. Not to become one, but to save something beautiful. And that concludes this mysterious tale. Thank you for watching until the end. I hope you enjoyed every part of the story. Don't forget to support this channel by subscribing, liking, and commenting. See you in the next horror story.